we can look and see that concrete is a significant portion of the oval, a significant portion of Thunderbird Old, not quite as large in Thunderbird New. So now we're going to go into our results for the impact categories. If you're the type of person that loves graphs, sit down, buckle up, hold on to your hat. So we're going to start off here. We picked 3 categories of interest that we thought we would like to focus on. The first impact category is global warming potential. If we look at comparing the 3 buildings as a whole building, you see the categories are split up between the earthworks. In the case of the new Thunderbird Arena, that also includes the deconstruction of the old Thunderbird. Consumption during construction and consumption during manufacturing, which is the resource extraction and processing. As a whole building, the Olympic Oval stands out from its peers for its tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, but we need to note that the building is significantly larger than the others. So if we want to go and break it down and use functional units to give us a more level playing field, more accurate idea of how to compare the buildings, we could take this down and look at simply the impacts per square foot of floor area. When we take this down, things are a bit more level between the 3, but again we can see that the Olympic Oval is totaling up towards 45 tons, whereas the Thunderbird Old is down at 25 tons of CO2 equivalent. If we take this and compare this to previous studies, which have created our database of UBC academic buildings, we can see how these venues stack up. It's not entirely appropriate to compare because we're talking about sports complexes versus academic space, but it does sort of put these buildings into context. If we jump ahead then now, we're looking at weighted resource use. We can see that the Olympic Oval here has a significant portion in earthworks. This makes sense when you think that the soil that the Olympic Oval was constructed on was right beside the Fraser River. It was very poor soil, and they had to preload it prior to construction with fill. The fill for the entire footprint of the building was up to 8 meters tall to preload the site, cause all the settling that might happen. So earthworks is a significant portion of the Richmond Olympic Oval. Now again, if we take this and break it down into the per square foot of building area, we can see that again the oval has a significant earthworks portion, but it's also interesting, Thunderbird Old seems to have consumed significant materials in its construction. Comparing again to the UBC Olympic average, we can see a bit of a middle finger from Thunderbird Old. It stands out slightly. And compared to our other structures, which are actually rather close to the UBC academic building average. The last category that we considered was the fossil fuel consumption, the primary energy use. This was measured in terajoules. That's joules times 10 to the 12. Which is just a huge number, kind of unfathomable. Again, when you look at the whole building, the Olympic Oval is very high up there. We break it. Oh, you put the slide in here, Rob. It's not my presentation. If we try and take the number of terajoules and make that more understandable, if we look at benchmark against an average for the new Thunderbird Arena, the consumption for the Thunderbird Arena is approximately equivalent to 582 houses in their annual energy use. So that's a number that's maybe easier to get your head wrapped around. But if we continue on, again, break things down by our functional units per square foot of surface area, we get a more even distribution with the Olympic Oval a bit higher, Thunderbird Old coming in second, and Thunderbird New consistently seeming to perform better. Comparing to the UBC average, to put things in context, we have Thunderbird Old is slightly over, Thunderbird New is slightly under, and Richmond Oval is slightly above the Thunderbird Old. So all these results, they're values, but they're kind of meaningless. What can we take this, how can we use this and help us with our design and proceeding forward with buildings? say we were to go and take this study and do it during the construction of buildings. We could, with our designs, then do a sensitivity analysis. Now, what we do with the sensitivity analysis is that we take materials of interest, or indeed all materials in the building, and we increase their quantity as input into the impact estimator by 10%. We take that and we, again, run our impacts, and we compare to the original impacts to create a relative difference. What this relative difference indicates is how sensitive each of our impact categories are to a change in material quantity. So here, this graph here for the new Thunderbird Arena shows the impacts of 5 categories on all of our impact categories. The thing that's striking about this is that in almost all of the considered impact categories, increasing just 30 MPa concrete by 10% is a significant portion of every impact category. So one thing to be taken away from this is that changing the amount of concrete would create the biggest change in our bill of materials. It's important to keep in mind that each material has both a potency and a volume. So in this case, the result here is a combination of the heavy energy used in the manufacture of concrete, as well as the sheer volume of concrete used within the construction of the building. If we were to go and zoom in here on just the global warming potential, we see that concrete impacts that category. It causes a relative change of about 3.2%, and that's significantly higher. The rest of the materials considered don't even reach the 0.5% mark. And if you're familiar with the manufacturing process of concrete, if you're making Portland cement, it's hugely resource intensive. You put calcium and lime into a giant furnace. It runs at a high temperature. This furnace, you can chuck a Volkswagen Beetle in, and it runs for about the length of a 40-story building, and off gases significant amounts of carbon dioxide. So the result here isn't terribly surprising, and what we can take away from this is, say we wanted to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that our building manufacturer is creating, we could look at concrete and say this is a material that we would get a lot of change if we could reduce the volume of concrete or somehow change it. So taking the sensitivity analysis now, we've been comparing these buildings based just on square foot of floor area, but that's not really a good way of comparing the buildings either. You can see here that all 3 buildings have significantly different functional areas. You know, looking between parking, storage, retail, seating, and the likes. Perhaps a more accurate way to do this would be to go through again and compare each result to the functional area of the building. So progressing forward, we could go and maybe get a better idea of how these buildings stack up to each other. So now, having done this study, we now have, for the first time ever, a life cycle assessment completed of some Olympic venues. This is something that we hope will progress forward and be included in all Olympic impact studies in the future. And indeed, we hope this is something that becomes standard for buildings. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if we were to do this for all of Vancouver? Vancouver would become the new standard by which other cities would compare themselves against using life cycle assessments. So Thunderbird now will go into our UBC LCA database. This database, as we mentioned before, is the largest LCA database within North America, and perhaps the Olympic Oval could be a start of a database for the Greater Vancouver Regional District. So I'm going to pass it on to Zach, who's going to wrap things up.
I'll switch your necks over here so you guys aren't stuck in one spot for the whole time. Okay, so we've done this study for these 3 Olympic venues. We've also done studies over the past 2 years on multiple UBC buildings. So what we want to do now is start to globalize this, and we want to look to see how we really compare to the rest of the world. So the Olympics are coming up in the next year in London, and London actually did a carbon study of the impacts of their games. The scope of this study included the pre-game venue construction and construction of other structures